Okay, we we okay to go into the what we're going to do next year after what we've done this year. You seeing all this, Rog? Yeah, it's all
Yeah.
good. Yeah,
Yeah, it looks great.
it does look neat, doesn't it? All you do is type in the letters and it says, "Here's your suggestion." Great. Very impressed with it. PowerPoint. I didn't design any of these, obviously.
Don't give the secrets away, Calvin.
No, you know, technology is there to make you look intelligent, isn't it? So I looked the other day. I mean, we're going to talk about something that I've been interested in for a few years now, and I thought I've been interested in this for 2 or 3 years. I've been properly looking into this for the last 6 or 9 months, probably, well, certainly since the Drain Smoke project was coming to an end. And I was aware that I went on the Sheffield History Chat website, and I thought I've been looking into this for 2 or 3 years, hadn't I? And when I looked at it, it was 7 years ago that I first commented on a thread about what I'm about to talk about. And so this is very much. This is what I would hope, having had that 6-month funded work from Europe. I'd very much like to get another similar funded period of work, hopefully more fully funded. I'm not sure where the source is going to be, but this is the plan off the back of last year's work to try to look into this as a project. This is something different. This is obviously it's not something that's linked to previous work, or not obviously linked to previous work. So I'm very keen on us to branch out, and me in particular, not to be doing something different rather than the stuff we've done or I've done. So here it is, and this is Fritchley in Derbyshire, not too far away in the peaks, and that on the red arrow, underneath the red arrow on the right, so on the wall on the right hand side, is one end of a tunnel, and in the trees in the middle of the photo is the other end of a tunnel. So between 2 people's gardens there runs a tunnel, and it is from an 18th century tramway. It's the Butterley Gangway. So it's an industrial tramway of which there were any number at the time, of which Sheffield had loads. Just a horse-drawn or a man-pushed carts, wheels on a track, originally wooden, to move between quarries, mines, etc. And this is a couple of miles long, or a bit less than that, and it linked a few industrial sites with the Cromford Canal in the peaks. And yeah, so Sheffield had lots of these in places like Ecclesall Woods and Beeley Woods. It was quite often we had a 50 or 100 yard long little tramway to do just that, to move things from A to B. But we did have but this one is longer. You know, it's a couple of miles long, and we also have one similar in Sheffield, which I get into. And the tunnel itself, so that is basically it. In the 1920s or 30s, it was since filled in. Because it's in people's gardens, but this is what this line, I should say, in Derbyshire carried on to the 1930s. It ran for about 150 years, so it did carry on into almost living memory, and that's what we're talking about when we're talking about a tunnel going under a road. It's as simple as that. It's just cut and cover. They've made the cutting, put the top back on it again, and that's what we've got. But this is built in 1793. This tunnel for this tram road, and this is the officially recognised oldest railway tunnel in the world. That's that in front of us, and that's it. It's filled in. It was recently uncovered again in 2013 for a survey and information boards to be put up. But it's only been buried for the last 30 or 40 years. So really recently, it was well known about. It wasn't quite appreciated. I think that it was the world's first or oldest known. And it recently was uncovered again, then filled back up again, as is often the way. But the signs are up now, and the recognition is in the Guinness Book of Records. It's recognised as that, and it's as basic as that. I would say, and this sort of tramway, the sort of tram road, is something that Sheffield had plenty of. Now, it had these short ones in the woods and linking sort of Ganister and various quarries together, but we also had a longer one. We also had, so this was built 1793. Sheffield had an equivalent length tramway, nearly 2 miles long, built in the 1770s, and going into the town centre. So it went from Manor side of the city down into the Don Valley, down along where the canal is now, and into the city centre. So we had an equivalent size and length tram road to this one here in Derbyshire 20 years earlier than this one. And not an awful lot is known about it, enough, but not an awful lot, and it will benefit from being looked into. So the Butterley Gang Road, 1793-1933, linking mines and quarries with the canal and home of the world's oldest known railway tunnel, and as I said, buried in the 70s, uncovered again recently. And this is our test, this is our comparison, this is the thing I'm putting our tram road to get to up against this one here. And here we are in Sheffield, and this is the end. This is in an industrial back street in S2. This is the end of Cricket Inn Road going out of town. So it's the bottom of Manor Lane, for people that know the area, and the end of Cricket Inn Road. Pretty, it's not an obviously attractive historically spot, which is part of the attraction, of course. But for me, something that's unattractive makes it attractive, but that's it. And this is it from the other side. So same site from the other side, looking towards the town centre along Cricket Inn Road. And it's here under my feet when I took this photograph that I think we may have the world's oldest railway tunnel. So I have good grounds to think there's a realistic prospect that there is a similar tunnel to the one we've just seen the photograph of under this road. And what we do know is that it's on the route of the tramway. So this tramway here, our tramway closed earlier. It closed in 1870. So it suffers from not being not having photographs or film of it. The Butterley Gang Road has footage of and has photographs of, and is well known where it was. And in fact, a lot of the cuttings and embankments are still there, whereas Sheffield's is now in a built-up area, and most of it, almost all of it, has obviously gone. But we do know the route of it. It appeared on maps for 100 years, which we'll have a look at in a bit. But this is the route of the tramway, and on the left-hand side at the end of it is the Park Square roundabout, so it's almost right in the city centre. But it, starting in that bottom right corner, it started at a pit which is now behind City Road Cemetery, Manor Pit. It went to Corker Bottoms Pit, which is 100 yards away, 200 yards away, and then it took coal down into the valley, we can see, and then along where the canal is now. This was done to it apparently halved the cost of moving coal from even a site just a mile outside the city centre. It was cheaper to do it this way than to pay the carters, the men with the horse and cart, to take the coal to the centre where it was distributed in the town. So this is the Duke of Norfolk estate, as so much as of Sheffield at that time. He owned all this land on the route, and he basically built an early tramway of this length. It was it's unusual of this length, being nearly 2 miles long at this time. And it was built in 1774, and it was built with wooden rails. It was built with beech rails, they think. And the men whose living relied on moving coal by horse and cart, and what they call the mob, the Sheffield mob, destroyed the tram, ripped it up, and it was replaced with cast iron railways, we think in 1777. And if so, we talked about the world's oldest iron bridge. Some history books call this the world's first cast iron railway. I mean, it's just like so much of it. It depends on your definition of railway, and the oldest tunnel depends on your definition of tunnel as well. So it's never, it's not black and white. But what we have is a very early, what we would recognise as a railway, and possibly the earliest. And it's one of these funny things. It's in various Sheffield history books. There's a little page about it in various history books of Sheffield, and you just think, and you read this line, and it says possibly the world's first cast iron railway. And you think, well, how would, like so much of Sheffield history, I'm always staggered by. I just think, how could people not know about that? How are we not talking about that? but it's often the case. And I know this city does hide its light under a bushel, and I know that there is more important things and things to be uncovered and found out about. And so in comparison to the Butterley one, the John Kerr tramway. So there was a guy in his 20s at the time, John Kerr, who was from the northeast, and he at a young age was made the manager of the Duke of Norfolk's mines, collieries, which was a huge job. And he was an inventor. And what we do know is that the manor pits were the first to have cast iron rails in the pits themselves. And he invented that. He wrote about it in a book around 20 years later. We do know that he put cast iron rails into the pits in the mid 1770s. We do know that he built a wooden railway in 1774, or the Duke of Norfolk did, who he worked for. We know that railway was destroyed, and we know at some point that railway was relayed with cast iron rails. Now, knowing that he was using cast iron rails in the pit in 1777, people I think assumed that he relayed that railway in cast iron around the same time. Now, it's not certain. It was certainly done within 20 years. If it was done in 1777, it puts it right at the beginning of what we now call a railway, a modern railway. And this was there for 100 years, and it went in bridges over roads, and it was very clearly defined where it was. One thing we do know is exactly the route of this tramway, and indeed it remains marked on maps well beyond. Look at some maps. This hasn't come out too great, this picture. So this is the town centre. The canal was built in 1819, so the canal is now there in the Don Valley in the basin. This is the end of the there's actually two drives. There's a branch of it as well, which I don't know much about, and it only appears on one or two maps. But the Colliery Railway, interestingly, it was called a railway before Sheffield had what we recognise as railways. 1838 is Sheffield's first railway station, opened to the Wicker in 1838. So to call it a railway at that point is interesting. It's clearly rails by then, but it may well have been rails, in the 1770s. It's clearly there are lime kilns and the coal pits, the gas works. It is the industrial bit of Sheffield that it's serving. I don't know if we can zoom on this. Can people zoom in closer on this? I'm not sure. This is one of the views of the 1855 Ordnance Survey map. Unfortunately, the Ordnance Survey line falls in where we don't want it to be. So this is one Ordnance Survey map, and the other one's on the other side, which I'll show next. If people can zoom on the screen, I'm not sure. The trackway is basically, it's on the left of that map, centre left, right up against the left-hand margin. I'm not sure if I can. Possibly you can't, because if I can't do it, I'm probably sharing with you on time what I'm seeing. Let's go on to the next. Okay, so this is the closer one. Now, so this is slightly along from the route we just looked. So this is the 1855 Ordnance Survey map, and this is the first Ordnance Survey map of Sheffield. And this was surveyed for 4 years before. It's a monster piece of work. Now, bottom right is move you all slightly out of my way because I'm seeing everyone's faces. In the bottom right of this map is the bit of Cricketing Road that I've just shown photos of. And as you can see, bottom right, the tramway goes under Cricketing Road. And it's the only place, everything else, the railway further up was built later, so it goes over. Other things are built, road bridges, later. But this, I think, is the Cricketing Road itself. This is the key. Cricketing Road appears on the map in 1808, and it appears unnamed on maps in 1790s. Cricketing Road, I think, is highly likely was there as a farm access road. There used to be a farm, nunnery farm, just at the end of it. The key to whether that's a tunnel or not is whether that road was there before the tramway, and it may be. You can see it's a very straight line, tram road, until it gets into the canal basin. So it may be like the Butterley gangway. They didn't want to deviate, and it was more convenient, easier to have a short tunnel under the road. You can definitely see that in 1858 that is going under that road. So the question is whether I've got about a 20-year gap between definite references to Cricketing Road in newspaper stories and the building of the tramway. So it's close. It's I think it's every chance that did go under an existing road, in which case a very similar structure would have been built to the one that is currently the record holder for the world's oldest tunnel. And it should be possible to find out one way or another, that's for sure. Yeah, and 1870, the last map that this appears on, the year that it closed. The tramway closes when one of the pits closed. The Corker Bottoms pit closed in 1870 and was replaced by a more modern colliery, Nunnery Colliery, which was nearby. Nunnery Colliery lasts until the mid 20th century. It's what we would recognise as a colliery, with slag heaps and winding wheels, etc., whereas the earlier pits were more basic, small operations. So one replaces the other, and by then, if you have a colliery, you have a little branch line. You have a branch off the main railway itself, so it's a lot easier. But this is the last map that it appears on, and yeah, on the centre right, the tramway goes in, is marked there, going under Cricketing Road, going under the railway, and then turning left there. So again, it's there as going under Cricketing Road at that point too, and that's the most modern map that it appears on. So looking at a recent map, 1921 Ordnance Survey, and towards the centre and centre left, where Manor Oaks and Corker Bottoms are, the trackway is still a cutting, is still marked there. So right in the top left corner, where Nunnery Lane is, and coming out diagonally through Corker Bottoms and heading towards just to the right of where Manor Oaks is marked. That line there, that pretty straight but diagonal line, going from top left to just below Corker Bottoms is the route, is the tramway. And it says 50 years after closure, it's still marked on Ordnance Survey maps. It must have been still the features must have still been there, must have still been a cutting. In fact, it almost still possibly goes under the road in the top left corner. There are two possibilities where it went under roads. They're both near each other, next to each other, but there's two possible tunnel sites. And they are roads that I farm access roads. I'm sure they were there. And I have had someone tell me online that they remember seeing a set of photographs of this area from the 20s showing what they describe as still some of the tramway being intact in some way. Now, I'm thinking disused railway, just a path with ballast, or a cutting, some wall maybe in each side if you had an embankment or a cutting. I'm not saying the tracks were there, but the path was there, the route was there, and no one's been able to turn up these photographs, unfortunately. But quite likely that the route is still being marked on maps 50 years after closure. And this area is only developed. This is the Manor Estate. Manor Estate's built in 1926, 27. So this is just prior to the area's development. And where, but lots of the manor is not developed because of the shaft, because of the pits, quarries, etc., that are in the area. So there's still quite a green space. There's still places that have never been built on that could be surveyed or even dug to find out whether there's still more remnants here than I'm thinking there are. And this, I think, is part of the track bed. This is exactly on the route of this is round the back of houses on Harbour Avenue. And when the manor estate's constructed in 26, 27, this road is built up against the pathway, the old trackway. So all the maps, overlaying all the maps, is exactly where this should be. And there's a short stretch through this, the former Corker Bottom pit, and it's through a recreation ground, through bushes, but there's a stretch of track bed I think. There's some old some granite. It looks like something you'd see out on the hills out in the peak somewhere. I think recognisably every chance that is an old industrial base of a tramway. If it is, it's the only bit that's left, or is still, you know, visible to be made out. So yeah, I think there's a very interesting. It's interesting completely because it's a part of mine history. It's a part, you know, mining history, Sheffield history. There's a story there. Whatever. There's something that's there to be researched and find out more about. Looking through the National Newspaper Archive, there's regular stories about the tramway in the second half, the mid 19th century. Several people are killed in accidents on the tramway. There are several newspaper stories of workers being accidentally dragged down, but with the tram. There are stories people were killed, including a child, in the 1840s by picking up the bits of coal that had fallen off the tram and basically going onto the tracks and getting hit. So occasionally, when you search it in the National Newspaper Archive, you occasionally find references to it, and you just see it's something that was there for 100 years, and was clearly a structure. It was well marked on survey maps, and the route is still there. Like disused railways often are, the route is still there decades later on the maps. The shape of it's still there, the outline of it's still there, and I think this bit here is part of it. So it comes down to a few things. Obviously, the world's oldest railway tunnel bit is the cherry on the cake, but I still think it's interesting. In itself. I still think it would open up, add to knowledge of something very interesting. It would bring this sort of heritage project into an area of Sheffield that isn't, which in S2, we've got the manor, the old manor houses and the old manor lodge, etc. But other than that, this would add to knowledge in that area. And we come down to trying to fill that 20-year gap between the first references to the Cricketing Road and whether that what was there first. That's why it comes to whether the road was built over first. Now, there are several things that lead me in the direction of it being a tunnel, one of which is bridges are marked on the 1855 Ordnance Survey map, where a road has come second and has been either and the road has either gone under or been bridged over the tramway. It says bridge. The Ordnance Survey maps don't say bridge at Cricketing Road. They just show the tracks going under the road and re-emerging on the other side. They don't say tunnel, but they don't say bridge either. I think I think they're just upline. It says bridge. So I think it's a decent chance, and it should be possible, hopefully, to find out with surveying. Roger will tell us in a bit, but with some sort of a survey or hopefully even a dig. And I'm hoping this is a project where there's stuff to find in proper archaeological style rather than just seeing things on the street as I normally do. So just that middle sentence there is that we might just have the world's oldest railway and the world's oldest railway tunnel. I mean, it's and I like my railways, and it's just, well, to me, I mean, you can't, that's got to be of interest. But even if that's not the case, we still have a very important part of Sheffield's history that, like so much else, will benefit from being studied. It would be, there's two things here which I've never really done before, which would need doing. Firstly is archaeological surveying and digging, I would hope. But secondly is research, and real research, going through papers that nobody's ever gone through before, going through those records that are in the local archive. Because the Duke of Norfolk estate, the one big plus of that is a huge landed gentry landowner. He kept all these records. You know, he didn't spend, it cost over £3,000 to build this tramway in 1774. There's going to be a paper trail for that. There's going to be maps, there's going to be the design, there's going to be plans, there's going to be expenditure, and it's all in there. It's just, it's a huge collection, and we do have it. It is in the local study archive. It could take weeks, basically. It could, because you just have to dig in there for it. So there's, in terms of time, in terms of trying to get funded time to do it, that's the thing. It's a lot of research, and then there's archaeology to do, I hope. So yeah, I think it's different to what we've done before. I just think there's a possibility that I mean, this is when that oldest railway tunnel was categorised as such. It was in the national newspapers. The guy that had the world's oldest railway tunnel in his garden, you know, got into the various news, and it'll be fantastic to have a go and just see if we might just bring that record to Sheffield.